when you ask how to live now, so that when you meet yourself you will not be afraid, you are already touching the threshold of the most intimate and the most perilous of journeys, the confrontation with the self. I speak not of the shallow self, the mask you wear to navigate the day, but of the deep, vast and ancient self that existed before you were named, before you were shaped by the expectations of others, before you began the long apprenticeship of survival. This self lives within you as the root lives beneath the earth unseen, yet feeding everything that grows above. To meet it is to encounter both your origin and your destiny. And many tremble at the prospect because it will not flatter your illusions, nor will it bow to your carefully constructed persona. The greatest fear in meeting yourself is not that you will find something monstrous, though you will, but that you will be stripped of all the false securities to which you have clung. You will discover how much of your life has been lived in exile from your own soul. The question you pose is not theoretical, it is the question of your very existence, for the day will come when you will stand face to face with that inner reality, whether in a dream that will not release you, in the shattering of an outer life you thought was solid, or at the edge of your mortal breath when all masks fall away. To live now in such a way that you will not be afraid then, this is to live consciously, courageously, and mystically. You see, the self is not merely the sum of your virtues, it contains the totality, light and shadow, creation and destruction, tenderness and ferocity. Most live in fragments, cherishing only the qualities that win approval, discarding the rest into the darkness. But what you banish does not disappear. It waits, it grows, it distorts, until one day you are forced to recognize it in the face of another whom you despise, or in the inexplicable repetition of your own suffering. The terror in meeting yourself is the terror of looking into the mirror and seeing not only the angel you hope to be, but also the serpent you refuse to acknowledge. Yet both are you, and until you embrace the serpent, you will never truly know the angel. Therefore, the task is not to create a self that will be pleasing to meet, but to create the courage to meet the one who already exists in fullness within you. You cannot rehearse for this meeting by perfectionism, by moral posturing, or by the relentless polishing of your image. You prepare by the slow and honest work of descent into your dreams, into your fears, into the forgotten chambers of your own story. Every unexamined reaction, every jealousy, every longing that you dismiss as irrational is a messenger from the depths. Ignore them, and they will conspire against you. Listen to them, and they will guide you to the place where fear dissolves into recognition. Living now, so that you will not be afraid later, means you must allow small meetings with yourself every day, in solitude, in reflection. In the moments when the outer noise subsides, you must dare to ask, what am I hiding from? What am I pretending not to know? What have I sacrificed for the comfort of belonging? These questions are keys to a door that opens only inward, and you must pass through that door willingly. For if you wait until life forces it open, you may find yourself blinded by the sudden light. In our time, We are seduced into constant movement, constant distraction. For the psyche's greatest enemy is not hardship but unconsciousness. A life lived without depth is a life lived in exile from the self. And so when the moment of confrontation comes, the unprepared soul recoils, for it meets not a friend but a stranger. The stranger may be fierce, accusing, sorrowful, or mocking for it, carries all the abandoned parts of you. But if you have made a habit of turning toward these exiled aspects now, of letting them speak and take their place at the table of your being, then when you meet yourself in the fullness of time, you will greet not an enemy but a long-awaited companion. The myths understood this. They told of heroes who descended into the underworld not to escape it, but to return with its treasure. Orpheus, who sought his beloved in the realm of shadows. Inanna, who was stripped of all power before she could ascend. Christ, who entered death before rising into life. These are not mere stories. They are blueprints of the soul's journey. If you wish to live now, so that you will not be afraid to meet yourself, you must live as if you are already walking this mythic road. For in truth, you are. Every choice either takes you deeper into the labyrinths where the Minotaur waits the embodiment of your shadow, or keeps you at the threshold, pacing, waiting for courage that will never arrive by accident. And so, I tell you, the way to live without fear of that final meeting is to begin it now, in fragments and whispers, in dreams and symbols. Speak with your shadow in the language it understands, not judgment, but acknowledgement, not denial, but curiosity. Let the dream that unsettles you remain in your heart until its meaning ripens. Do not turn away from the person in your life who provokes your deepest irritation, for they are showing you the face of something you have not yet claimed in yourself. Do not silence the voice within that tells you the truth you do not wish to hear, for it is the herald of the very self you fear and long for, because when the meeting comes, there will be no more time to negotiate. You will be alone with yourself, and every neglected truth will rise to greet you. If you have befriended them, they will stand beside you as allies. If you have fled from them, they will stand over you as judges. Live, therefore, as one who is already preparing for the most important conversation of your existence. The conversation with your own soul. When you dream, you are already in the presence of yourself. Though most take these encounters as strange theater rather than sacred messages. The dream is the royal road to the unconscious, and the unconscious is the dwelling place of the self. There, your shadow walks without disguise. Your unlived potentials wear faces you half recognize, and the archetypes, those primordial patterns of human existence, move through the stage with a gravity that outshines any mortal figure. If you would live now so that you will not be afraid later, you must become an interpreter of this nightly scripture. The dream will not flatter you. It will not edit your life to keep your comfort intact. It will reveal the conflict between your surface identity and your deeper reality. In one dream, you may be chased by an animal whose eyes seem to know you. In another, you may stand before an endless ocean, both terrified and drawn to enter. Each symbol is a fragment of the self trying to speak, and every time you turn toward the meaning rather than away from it, you diminish the fear of that final meeting. Understand that your dream life is not fantasy, but the living myth of your soul. It is the place where the archetypes rise like mountains and seas, where the inner child you abandoned still wanders through forgotten rooms, where the old wise figure waits in the shadows for you to ask the right question in the language of the psyche. These figures are not parts of you. In the simple sense, they are eternal presences, patterns older than your birth. The shadow is the guardian of your power. The anima or animus is the bridge to your inner opposite. The wise old man or woman is the custodian of your destiny. To live without fear of meeting yourself is to begin recognizing these inner companions now, to invite them into your waking life, to act as if your dreams are not separate from your reality, but the deeper layer of it. Yet, meeting oneself is not only about dreams, it is about the raw encounters in waking life that shake the ground beneath you. Have you noticed how certain people provoke you instantly? Without logic, that instant reaction is the shadow rising in defense or accusation. When you despise someone's arrogance, perhaps it is because you have buried your own assertiveness so deeply that it rots in silence. When you envy someone's freedom, it may be the imprisoned wanderer within you that cries out. Life is constantly arranging these meetings, subtle rehearsals for the great meeting to come, but the ego resists. It prefers to project, to blame, to dismiss, rather than to absorb the shock of recognition. This too is me. To live consciously now is to reverse the habit of projection. Instead of saying, they are this or that, you ask, where in me does this live? This question is an alchemical key. It transforms outer conflict into inner integration, outer judgment into self-knowledge. The more often you ask it, the less likely you are to be surprised or shamed when the self finally stands before you in its totality, for you will have seen its face in countless mirrors along the way. There is a great danger in waiting until the end to do this work. If you live only on the surface, your inner life becomes a neglected wilderness. The longer it is abandoned, the more overgrown it becomes, and when you finally enter, it is not a place of welcome, but of disorientation. You will find wild creatures there, instincts untamed, decides unacknowledged, grief unwept. They will not know you, and you will not know them. This is why some souls, when death approaches, are filled with panic, not because of what lies beyond, but because they realize they are strangers to themselves. The work of living without fear of that meeting is the work of inner cultivation. Every day you must walk the landscape of your own psyche, clearing paths, planting seeds, listening to the streams. Sometimes you will find beauty there. Sometimes you will find bones. Do not turn away from either. The beauty reminds you of your divine inheritance. The bones remind you of what you have lost and must mourn. Both are necessary for the soul to become whole. And do not think that wholeness means perfection. Wholeness is the capacity to contain contradictions without being shattered by them. It is the ability to hold the dark and the light, the saint and the sinner, the creator and the destroyer in the same heart. When you can sit in the presence of your own paradox without rushing to resolve it, you are nearing the state in which meeting yourself becomes not a threat but a homecoming. For the self is nothing if not paradox. It is the union of opposites, the marriage of heaven and hell within you. This is why so many fear the encounter. They cling to their one-sided identity. The moral man does not want to see his capacity for cruelty. The free spirit does not want to see her hidden need for control. The healer does not want to see the wounded child who manipulates others for love. Yet to deny these truths is to remain half alive. To welcome them is to step into the fullness of being, and in that fullness, fear has no place. The soul's journey is not linear. It moves in spirals, in returns, and deepening circles. You will meet the same wound in different disguises, the same archetype in different clothes. Each return is an invitation to greater intimacy with yourself. Resist, and the pattern will tighten like a noose. Engage, and the pattern will open like a doorway. The doorway always leads deeper, deeper into the labyrinth, deeper into the center where the self waits. That center is not a place you can map, but it is a place you can prepare for by the way you live. Every act of self-honesty, every dream interpreted, every shadow embraced, every projection withdrawn is a step toward that center. And the more steps you take now, the less distance you will have to cover when the ultimate meeting arrives. Do not be deceived into thinking this is a solitary journey in the ordinary sense. You will find guides along the way, sometimes in human form, sometimes in books, sometimes in symbols that appear at just the right moment. These are manifestations of the archetype of the guide, the wise one, the psychopomp. They remind you that the self is not only what you meet at the end, but what has been guiding you from the beginning. The fear you have of meeting yourself is often the fear of realizing that your entire life has been orchestrated for this encounter. It means that nothing was accidental, not even your mistakes, not even your failures. Every loss, every betrayal, every love, every dream was a thread in the tapestry designed to lead you home. To live now in the awareness of this truth is to live in alignment with your destiny. It is to walk as if every step is both ordinary and sacred, as if every face you meet is another mask of the self. This is not an abstract philosophy. It is a practice. It requires humility, for you will see parts of yourself you wish did not exist. It requires courage, for you will have to face them without the armor of pretense. And it requires love, not sentimental love, but the fierce love that accepts what is without turning away. To meet yourself without fear is to die before you die. I do not speak here of physical death, though that too will come as it must, but of the symbolic death that strips away the false layers of identity until only the essence remains. In every true spiritual tradition, this death is central. The alchemists called it the nigredo, the blackening, the putrefaction from which new life emerges. Christ called it losing one's life in order to find it. In the language of the psyche, it is the dissolution of the persona, that carefully crafted mask that allows you to function in society but imprisons you in its limitations. When you live as the persona alone, you live as an actor who has forgotten they are on a stage, and the thought of meeting the self is terrifying because it threatens to tear away the script and the costume. To live now so that you will not fear that tearing means to begin willingly. The slow removal of your disguises. You do this by recognizing where your life has become theater. Perhaps you play the role of the uncomplaining one, forever agreeable while your true voice withers. Perhaps you wear the costume of the strong one, never allowing your tears to fall while your soul aches for softness. Perhaps you live as the rebel, always in opposition, unaware that your rebellion is another mask hiding your longing for belonging. Each time you notice such a pattern and dare to drop the act, you enact a small death. And with each death, the self becomes less of a stranger. This death and rebirth is not an event but a rhythm. You will cycle through it many times. If you are alive to your own growth, the psyche will send you dreams that dismantle your illusions, relationships that challenge your self-image, crises that shake your sense of control. To the unconscious, these are not punishments but initiations. The ego resists, fearing annihilation, but in truth, what dies is only what was never truly you. What is essential is never destroyed. It waits beneath the ashes, as the phoenix waits for the fire that will free it. In myth, the hero often must descend into darkness before gaining the treasure. This descent is always a symbolic death. Orpheus enters Hades to find Eurydice. Psyche descends to the underworld to fetch the box of beauty. Christ spends 3 days in the tomb. These stories are not about others, but about you. The underworld is the unconscious. The treasure is the self. The death is the surrender of who you think you are. If you can live your daily life as if you are preparing for this descent by turning toward your fears, your grief, your unfulfilled longings, then the moment you meet yourself will not be a shock but a recognition. The greatest fear we carry is not of the darkness itself, but of being alone in it. Yet the paradox is that the self is always there in the depths, waiting like a hidden sun. You have met it already in moments you may not have recognized, the sudden insight that changes the direction of your life, the deep calm that comes when you surrender to what is, the strange joy that arises even in the midst of grief. These are brief openings in the wall between you and your wholeness. If you cultivate awareness of these moments, you will begin to trust that the self is not an enemy to be faced, but a presence that has loved you from the beginning. Love not the sentimental kind, but the profound acceptance of what is the final antidote to fear. When you can love the parts of yourself you once condemned. You disarm the power they hold over you. Imagine entering a room to meet a person you have dreaded all your life, only to embrace them with warmth because you recognize them as your own forgotten twin. This is the essence of the inner meeting, and the preparation for it is to practice such recognition every day. When anger rises, ask, what does this defend in me? When jealousy appears, ask, what longing does this reveal? When shame surfaces, ask, what truth does it conceal? These questions turn enemies into messengers and messengers into friends. It is tempting to think you can postpone this work, that you can deal with yourself later when the time is right, but the self does not operate on the ego's timetable. It will come to you in its own time, sometimes gently, sometimes with the force of an earthquake. The more you resist, the more sudden and overwhelming the encounter may be. The more you prepare, the more it will unfold like a long-awaited reunion. Preparing does not mean perfecting yourself. It means entering into dialogue with your depths. It means creating spaces in your life where silence can speak, where dreams can be recorded, where symbols can be contemplated without haste. And here is the mystery. The more you make peace with the self, the more life changes in ways that cannot be explained by logic alone. You begin to see patterns where before there was only chaos. You sense the meaning behind events that once seemed random. You realize that the people who enter your life, even those who bring difficulty, are carrying pieces of your own puzzle. This is not superstition. It is the perception of the archetypal field in which we all live. The self is not confined to your inner world. It shapes the outer world as well. It calls to you through synchronicities, through moments when the inner and outer mirror each other so perfectly that the distinction dissolves. If you are awake to these signs, you will realize that you have been meeting yourself all along in 1,000 disguises. When the final meeting comes, you will stand without the armor of the persona, without the illusions of control, without the distractions of the world, and you will know either with dread or with joy that you are in the presence of your own totality. If you have practiced seeing yourself in the mirror of life, if you have embraced your shadow, if you have loved your contradictions, then the meeting will not be a judgment but a homecoming. You will see that the self was never against you, only for your wholeness. You will understand that every joy and every wound was a gift designed to lead you here. And you will not be afraid. After the meeting, something irreversible happens. The division within you, the endless war between who you are and who you pretend to be dissolves, not because the parts disappear, but because they are finally allowed to exist together in the same space. This is the sacred marriage, the conjunctio of alchemy, where the sun and moon, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, embrace without the need to dominate one another. In the language of the soul, this is the union of opposites, and it is the natural end toward which all psychic life tends. Most never reach it fully, because they are afraid of what must die to make it possible. But once you have met yourself without fear, the marriage begins almost of its own accord. The union of opposites does not make you into something other than you are. It makes you more deeply yourself. You become less interested in defending an image and more interested in living the truth, however paradoxical that truth may be. You no longer need to hide your vulnerability to appear strong, nor deny your strength to appear gentle. You do not fear your capacity for anger, because you have seen its roots and can choose how to express it. You do not run from your grief, because you have learned it waters the roots of compassion. The opposites no longer pull you apart. They revolve around the center that holds them both, the self, awake and embodied. This embodiment is the true fruit of the meeting. Many imagine that the encounter with the self will leave them in a constant state of mystical rapture, untouched by the world. But the reality is subtler and more grounded. You will still face difficulties, still encounter the unknown, still feel the rawness of being human. The difference is that you will meet these experiences as one who is whole, no longer divided against yourself. The storms may come, but you will no longer be lost in them, because you have walked through the greatest storm already, the storm within, and found the eye at its center. And here is the quiet paradox. Once you have met yourself, you find yourself everywhere. The world becomes a mirror, not because you are projecting blindly, but because you recognize the shared patterns that weave through all things. You see the same archetypes in the lives of strangers, the same shadows in the conflicts of nations, the same longing in the eyes of a child and the silence of an old man. You begin to live mythically, aware that your personal story is a thread in the vast tapestry of the human soul. This awareness does not separate you from life, it binds you more deeply to it. For in knowing yourself, you have come to know humanity. Living from this place changes how you move through the hours. You no longer rush to escape discomfort, because you know what treasures discomfort can hold. You no longer cling to pleasure with desperation, because you have learned it is not the only doorway to joy. You no longer treat others as mere characters in your story, but as sovereign beings walking their own labyrinths toward their own center. The self within you recognizes the self within them, and in this recognition, fear gives way to reverence. And yet, this union is not an endpoint. It is a beginning. Meeting yourself without fear is not a final achievement, but the opening of a lifelong dialogue. The self will continue to reveal new depths, new contradictions, new potentials. The work is never finished, because the self is as vast as the universe, and you will spend your life exploring its landscapes. But the fear, that crippling resistance to what you might discover, will have lost its hold on you. You will walk forward with curiosity instead of dread, with wonder instead of suspicion. This is what it means to live now in such a way that when you meet yourself, you will not be afraid. It means practicing the descent into your depths in small ways every day, embracing the symbols and dreams that come to guide you, owning the shadow instead of casting it on others. and allowing the union of opposites to shape you into something more whole, more human, more divine. It means trusting that the self has been your companion all along, even in the moments you felt most alone. It means walking through this life not as a fugitive from your own soul, but as its conscious partner. And so, when the hour comes, whether in a dream that shakes you awake, a crisis that strips you bare, or that final crossing we call death, you will stand without trembling. You will look into the eyes of your totality and see no enemy there. You will see the child you once were, the shadows you once feared, the loves you once cherished, the wounds you once hid, all gathered in one vast embrace. And you will know with a certainty deeper than thought that you have come home